So I've been thinking about books lately. A shocker. But more so, I've started thinking about the way I consume books. The way I approach the books that I want to read, the books that I want to spend time with. And when I think about the books that have stayed with me the longest, they were always the ones that were the hardest for me to enter. They never handed meaning, understanding, or even language to me on a silver platter. I had to struggle with them. I had to really scratch my head and question my own intellect or just language capabilities because, man, were they hard. I've been thinking about difficult books lately. And I think it started when I noticed the books that I've been reading, although they were great, enjoyable, value-adding, oftentimes they would also be books that would just fly past my head. I would remember how I felt while reading them. I would remember bits and pieces about the book, but they do slip away. But the ones that I wrestle with, the ones that I struggle with, the ones that I scratch my head while reading them, they're the ones that I would find myself quoting for months and years to come and would become favorites of mine. I guess the journey becomes part of it, but overall, these difficult books really challenge not only the novel form, but also me as a reader. And this really came into full form when I was reading James Baldwin's Just Above My Head, which I have right here. James Baldwin's Just Above My Head, 2 months ago. This is a book that is not difficult on the general sense where language is difficult or it's hard to follow. There's nothing inherently difficult about it when you look at the technical lens of James Baldwin's writing. But when you look at the emotional depth as well as the heavy themes, the number of characters, it starts to become more and more daunting. And this is James Baldwin's last novel, so you know it's going to be good. And everyone told me it was going to be dense, and they were right. And it took me a couple of pages to get into it. But the experience itself felt so much fuller. It made me appreciate living with a book for a few days and just appreciating it and just absorbing it, trying to struggle with it, following what's happening. And at one point, it felt like I was, of course, as a hiker, I'm kidding. It felt like climbing a mountain. Then you realize that, oh my gosh, this sounds like a cliche, but the journey of reading the book made the book itself much, much richer. Which, it's already such a beautiful, amazing book, but the reading experience itself of having to process it and live with it and struggle with it, just amazing. And that's why today we're going to be talking about difficult books. Why I'm trying to read more of them, the authors that I love but have historically struggled with, authors that I have read one book of but want to explore more of, and lastly, authors that I have never read a single book of, but I do think they have something valuable to offer to me and that I would likely appreciate. So let's get to it. Why am I trying to read more difficult books? Why am I putting myself through the experience of struggling, feeling dumb, feeling stupid, not understanding anything, and just questioning my own reading capabilities? Well, I actually have 5 reasons for you, and this is kind of me convincing you to also start reading difficult books. So let's get to it. Number 1, the most cliche one, and would apply for most reading, is that it expands your attention span. And I, as someone who has one of the worst attention spans I know, and my friends would know this, any sound or movement I see, my head would turn and I get distracted. And for someone who reads, I have one of the worst attention spans that I know. Difficult books require my full attention and then some extra. Because in a world that is so constantly dominated by like lights and sounds of movements and excitement and fast-paced, people scroll and skim the whole day. Difficult books force slowness. Difficult books force attention, which I think now is a luxury. And the thing with difficult books is I don't always succeed, but it feels like I'm training myself to sit with something that forces slowness, with something that resists speed. Because then reading becomes less goal-oriented. It becomes less of a consumerist lens, but more of an immersion, which I think some of the best reading experiences are. Number 2, confronting the unknown, which is also basically feeling dumb. Reading difficult books, you will not understand everything on your first read. Reading difficult books is basically letting yourself feel like the stupid one between you and the book. Because you are not going to understand it. So many things are going to fly past your head. You're going to have to reread pages. You have to sit and process and struggle. And in a way, reading difficult books is basically like travel. You go to an entirely new world that you've never experienced before and you are not familiar with, and you're letting yourself be a beginner. In a way, it's disorienting, but it's also why it's valuable, because I don't always want literature that always feels familiar. I want something different. I want something that challenges me, something that introduces me to thinking and experiences and just the way a novel can be in ways that I never imagined before. Because if everything is familiar, then how boring would that be, right? Next is a bit more personal, but it rewards rereading. And as someone who loves rereading books, who is willing to read a book 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6 times, difficult books reward rereading. Because as I said, you are not going to get everything the first time. You are going to feel like you only captured maybe 50% of that book. And that's okay. Because difficult books are layered. The more you read them, the more hindsight helps you, the more context helps you. But more than that, more than just discovering new things, you realize that books and literature, they're not static. They're dynamic. They change as you change. You read a book when you're in your early 20s and you reread the same book when you're in your 40s. You will have drastically different life experiences. And with that come different understanding. And the same book that you're reading might feel like a totally, entirely different book. Something you didn't love could be something that you now love. Something you hated, you might actually not hate anymore. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at literature and also growing up. As I'm saying this, that's actually a beautiful way of looking at aging, is you get all of these new life experiences and things that you've loved and enjoyed or hated take on a new and different form to you. And how lucky if you love a book and you grow up and you realize you love it even more, but now with a different point of view. Next is resistance in a world of ease. With the way the world is going, with generative AI, with convenience culture, everything being optimized, consumable, easy, everything is just meant to make our lives, quote unquote, easier. And difficult books resist that. Difficult books do the exact opposite. They remind you that so many things, so many of the best things in life come from ones that are not instantly gratifying. I don't know if that makes sense, but that come from things that you have to work for, that you have to struggle with, that you have to really dedicate your time and effort to. And in a way, this resistance of ease, of making things more difficult. Oh wow, I was going to make a hiking reference, and now as I said it, I might as well. Well, that same journey, that difficult journey of reading a book, of struggling with it, makes sense of the climb. It makes the climb much, much more worthwhile. It elevates what was already going to be a beautiful destination, but being able to sit down with a book, annotate on it, read it, reread it, not understand it and then understand it, it just makes the experience so much richer because of that very struggle. Last but not the least, on a more technical lens, difficult books challenge what we think of the novel form. It reimagines language and the way novels can present themselves. Authors like Jon Fosse, Krasznahorkai, Samuel Beckett, they bend what we think a novel should be. They bend syntax and rhythm in ways that other authors have never been able to show me, at least from my own reading experience. You start noticing things about books that you never noticed before. You notice cadence, you notice language, you notice silence, you notice what is not said, you know, this rhythm. And these very difficult books remind you that language in and of itself and the way a book is written, the novel style, is not only there to tell the story, but it's an experience in and of itself. And my God, there are so many books I've read that just the style and the writing itself made the whole book for me much, much more worthwhile. So when I think about difficult books, I think about these 5 things that really make the experience worthwhile for me. And there are many authors that I'll be discussing in a bit that confirm this, have made me want to seek out more difficult books. Now, who are these authors? Who are the authors that I've read and struggled with, and the ones that I have zero experiences with, but I have a strong feeling I will love? First, we have the books. This is just a few of them, but these are the ones that I have really, that have required and demanded my full attention and have paid off. And I love them, and I would love to reread them for many, many years to come. First, we have, of course, Vuong's Nightcap with Exit Wounds. I first picked this up back in 2019 and I dropped it after like 2 poems because I was like, sir, what are you saying? I do not understand you. Am I too stupid for this? And guess what? It's not one of my favorite books of all time, and my copy is pretty much ruined at this point. I decided one day to just sit down, experience the book, let understanding take a back seat, and let myself experience it. I started writing on the book. I started replaying and actually speaking the words out loud until one day it mostly made sense. And I'm saying mostly just because I'm pretty sure if I read this book more and more times, I will unlock and unpack more of its meaning. But with where it is now, it's already my favorite book of all time. Next, we have Clarice Lispector. And this is just 3 of the 5 books I've read from her. But the thing with her is every single one of her books was a struggle to read. And I don't say that in a negative manner. And I say that in a way that is a compliment. Because Clarice Lispector puts into words thoughts and ideas that feel like they were formed from the birth of thought itself. If that even makes sense. I think some of the best works of literature puts into words thoughts that we've always had, but we were never able to say. But Clarice Lispector always feels like she's speaking as if she's inside the thought itself. Before it becomes something you can fully grasp, she was already thinking about it. She was already forming that thought. She was already stretching and questioning and trying to figure out before it even becomes a proper sentence. Reading Clarice Lispector feels like you're standing on shifting ground because she herself is challenging these notions and these thoughts and ideas. So it becomes both confusing but also electric. And the thing is, it's hard to explain Lispector. I have my favorites from her, but she's an author that I think is best experienced and best sat through and processed. Not an author you can just like randomly pick up and just like, oh, let me read a couple of pages while I am waiting for a friend. No, this is one that you need to sit with. This is one that you need to give your time and attention to. Oh, whoops, I missed another one. And I have another one, but I don't have a physical copy, which is Hour of the Star. Next, we have a more recent one, Jon Fosse's Septology. Look at this gorgeous, gorgeous copy. This is 7 volumes without a full stop. The man does not use a single period until the very end. It is a book that introduces so many of the things that intimidate me with difficult books and make me fall in love with it. Shifting thoughts, perspectives, timelines without a single paragraph break, so you feel like you're wading through a wave that never broke and it just keeps going and going, and you realize you're somewhere different, you're in a different thought from a different perspective in an entirely different timeline, and yet it makes sense. It was disorienting, but I would never call it exhausting. In a way, I would call it meditative. And even though I'm not a non-practicing Catholic, it felt like I was reading a prayer. It is a book that you have to surrender yourself to the rhythm, to the repetition that Jon Fosse is bringing, the way he introduces and reintroduces thoughts and experiences before it starts to reveal something deeper. And I feel like there is no other way this book could have been written than the way Jon Fosse did. And honestly, what a masterpiece. I read this last June of 2024, and it automatically rose up to become one of my favorite books of all time, and possibly my favorite novel of all time. And I hope to read his other works real soon. That is Jon Fosse for you. I've also read 2, 3 other books by him, and I love and adore each and every one of them. And last but not the least, not difficult on the, again, straightforward lens, is Ali Smith's How to Be Both. This is just one example of the books that I've read by Ali Smith. I also have other ones by her, such as the Spring Quartet, Free Love and Other Stories, etc. Because Ali Smith is an author that is known for the way she experiments with language, with time, form, structure, perspective, in a way that becomes playful. And there's joy in the difficulty of reading Ali Smith's work that I've always loved. It is not always the easiest to digest. Again, they're difficult books. They're not supposed to be easy to digest. But what sets Ali Smith apart, at least from the other books that I've read, it can be quite fun with her writing. There is joy and generosity in the way that she experiments with language that I've always looked forward to every time I flip open the first page of an Ali Smith book. So yes, those are just some authors that I have read, I think, a minimum 3-4 books by each of these authors, and every single time they have always been worth it. And they really solidified with me that some of my favorite books are actually these difficult books. But we are not stopping there, because we have a stack of books right beside me. I was gonna pick up these books to show them to you, but they're quite heavy and I almost strapped them on myself, so they're gonna stay here as I discuss each and every one of them. So for the next part, I will be sharing to you the books/authors that I have only read one book of, or have never read any books by them. But I think they have something to offer to me that might just change my life, or they might become my favorites. So I'll start with the authors that I have read at least a single book of, so I have a glimpse of their writing, but I still want to know more. First, we have Lianke. I have read Dream of Ding Village by him, not this one. This is on my personal TBR. Dream of Ding Village, the book that I've read from him, is about the blood-selling ring that happened in China that caused a major AIDS crisis in a small town in the country, and it was haunting. It was a beautiful, devastating political commentary of how that situation unfolded in China. But the thing I've read about Lianke is he's known for his satirical writing about the Chinese lived experiences, that you look at it from one point of view and you think, oh wait, that's kind of funny and hilarious, until you realize, wait, that's actually messed up and devastating and horrible. So in a way, his stories become like fables of real life in China that is told in a humorous lens about something that's serious. And I feel like I would appreciate the absurdity he uses in order to deliver truth. And at least from the way that I've read him, it can be quite dense when reading his works, but it's so worth it. That is Lianke. This is the 4 books, which is the book that I'm hoping to read next by him. Next we have Olga Tokarczuk. Specifically, the book that I've read by her is Flight, so this exact copy, which I'm hoping to reread. I read this when it won the International Booker Prize, and the thing is, I feel like I was too young when I read it, because the way people talk about Olga's writing is something that I feel like should resonate with me, but I don't think I appreciated this book as much as I would have when I was much younger. I feel like I was still in college back then, and I was actually reading this during my train rides, which I thought would be fitting about a book that is about kind of like transportation. But I do want to give it another shot, because people always describe her books as like wandering journeys, part myth, philosophy, but also part everyday life, which to me sounds absolutely beautiful and something that I would enjoy. And it feels like a book that I would get lost in the best way possible. But unfortunately, that wasn't my reading experience when I first read this book, so I do want to give it another try. And also check out her other books, which I feel like have been getting wonderful reviews. So at this age, it's been what, more than 5 years since I first read this, and she's had many more books then. I hope my brain would be more ready this time around, but I do want to give it another shot. So that is Olga Tokarczuk. Next is one of my favorite classics of all time, Marcel Proust. This is Swann's Way. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm holding this book, because What a reading experience. This was fantastic. And I read this back in 2022, I believe. And I remember really making an effort to look for a classic that I think I would love because I wanted to expand my reading taste. And I decided to choose Swann's Way by Marcel Proust because a lot of my favorite authors of all time always reference Marcel Proust in their works and make jokes about how long his works are. And I thought to myself, okay, let me read 15 pages a day for the next 3 months just so I can finish this. I devoured it. I finished this in like 3 weeks, I believe, which is not that fast, but it was not a struggle to me personally. It is the type of stream of consciousness writing that I love and adore. It is slow, it is obsessive, in a way that makes life feel so sacred. Marcel Proust turns memory into a whole world. And as someone who values memory, who values remembering, and it's one of the most important things in my life is I want to grow old and document my life so I can remember my life. And it feels like Marcel Proust is that author that can give that experience to me in writing. And it's how unfortunate that I've only read the first book. I already have the second book with me, but it felt so special my first time reading this book that I want to read it during the perfect moment, but honestly, when is it going to be perfect again? So I'm getting really excited as I'm holding this. That is Marcel Proust, an author I love and adore, but I've only read one book by him. And next, we're moving closer to authors that I have almost zero experience with. I'm saying that because I just finished László Krasznahorkai's, it's a long title, give me a sec. A mountain to the north, a lake to the south, paths to the west, a river to the east. And this is a book about the Prince of Genji being a nomad and exploring a temple in Kyoto that becomes a lot more metaphysical. But the thing is, apparently this is not really representative of most of his works in terms of mood and tone. This felt a lot lighter, beautiful in a way, in a sense, compared to his other books, which I have always known to be a lot more cynical, I would say. Again, I've never read his other works, so correct me if I'm wrong. And if I just read the blurbs at the back of the book, the Hungarian master of the apocalypse, one of the mysterious artists now at work, unsettling, intimidating, and I don't know yet how I feel about Krasznahorkai's writing as I finish this book. One of the main reasons I discovered him is because he's always posed to be one of the great Hungarian authors. I've heard Fosse get compared to him, or both of them just like get compared to each other. And it's always just piqued my curiosity. And then I heard about Satantango, which is a very, very well-known movie in the world of like independent cinema. I've never watched it, also want to watch it. And apparently it's somewhat inspired by this. And it started like falling into place. And I was like, that gives me more reason to explore Krasznahorkai's works. And when I did my research, he is known for relentless writing. His sentences go on and on and on, and they just seemingly never stop. Which you think would be similar to Jon Fosse, but it's an entirely different reading experience. If Fosse feels meditative and prayerful and just peaceful, Krasznahorkai can sometimes feel claustrophobic. It feels breathless while also feeling hypnotic. I feel like if there's one thing that would compare them, it's that hypnotizing element to it. But Fosse gives it to me in a more peaceful manner, while at least Krasznahorkai, from my minimal experience with him, felt a lot more breathless. And it's not a comparison of what's good or bad, they're just different from each other. And it intrigues me to read his other works where he's known to be discussing about the apocalypse, the meaning of life, and it becomes a lot darker and deeper. And I want to see how that writing translates when he talks about such topics compared to this one, which felt a lot more light in terms of its theme. So that is László Krasznahorkai from Hungary. Now we're going to authors I have never read before, and we're starting with my current read, which we have Karl Ove Knausgaard. I hope my friend's not watching this because she's Norwegian and she keeps correcting my pronunciation. Quick backstory, my friend bought me the first 2 copies of the My Struggle series of Knausgaard. And it's been on my TBR for I think 4 or 5 years since I was in Manila. I would always look for a specific copy and never found it. I've always read very interesting things about it. Both the good and the bad intrigues me enough to want to pick it up. People talk about Knausgaard as an author that writes about life with an embarrassing level of honesty. The way he would take everyday boring things and turn it into something a bit more magical, something a bit richer. The way he would smoke a cigarette, make coffee, just everyday mundane things, and he would stretch it into pages with some wordplay and make it a lot more interesting than it actually is. And I've read some criticism about him that sometimes he doesn't filter his writing and it feels voyeuristic, like you're watching literally his own life unfold into pages, and it feels like you're delving into something that is it's a bit too intimate for a stranger to be knowing about. And that fascinates me, that intrigues me, because for an author to just put their life out there, or at least, I mean, if it's autofiction, it's intriguing. It's intriguing. Because of this, one thing I've learned from my reading experiences is I love when authors take these everyday mundane things about life, whether it be theirs or another person's, and just put into a page and write it so beautifully that makes you appreciate it, or at least gives it a bit more gravity than how we usually treat it in our daily lives. So yes, that is Karl Ove Knausgaard. I decided before I go through that 6-part series, I wanted to get a little bit of a glimpse into his writing. So I'm reading The Morning Star. I'm 120 pages in. I'm enjoying it so far. Nothing much happening, intriguing, but I have no complaints. I am still seeing. It's still quite early on into the book, so I will report back, hopefully by this month. Next we have, and I realize I put this in the wrong category because I have read a Nabokov before with Lolita. I tried starting Pinin, as you can see, but it was not working. It was not working so far. Nabokov is an author that a lot of people I love and respect. Lolita as a book is an incredible feat. I think people who think of it as a romance, guys, it is not. I feel like it is one of the most misunderstood books. It's wonderfully written. Never gonna read it again. That was horrible, but in an incredible manner. The thing is, but the funny thing is, after reading Lolita by Nabokov, I feel like the work itself transcended him as an author in my head. That's why I actually don't know what to expect with a Nabokov. I don't know what he's known for. Because right now, Lolita to me works as a standalone novel when I read it. Like, yes, it's made by Nabokov, but I never really analyzed what makes this unique from other novels, aside from the incredible way he handled such a difficult, disturbing theme. So actually, I have nothing to say about this. I don't know what to expect from Nabokov. Russian authors intimidate me. That's a good enough reason for me to have it on this list. But yes, I do want to give Pinin a try. I heard about this get compared to Stoner, which is a book by John Williams that I love and adore. But I was a bit distracted while I was reading this, so I didn't really give it the attention it deserved. So I hope to revisit it sometime in the future. Not anytime soon, I don't think. But this is Vladimir Nabokov, with specifically Pinin that I want to read. And the only Russian author in this list, because I might be trying to read more Russian authors, because I might be trying to read more difficult authors, but Russian authors still go above beyond and intimidate me a little bit extra. Next we have Eileen Chang, which is an author I have never read before, but I have been wanting to read Love in a Fallen City and Half of a Lifelong Romance, which I have not been able to find a copy of, but I did find Little Reunions while I was traveling in Taipei. Unfortunately, a friend told me this might not be the best first book to read from Eileen Chang, but hey, I take what I can get. But the way Eileen Chang fascinates me is because I've always wanted to read more Chinese literature, but a lot of the Chinese literature I've been reading were from male authors, and I wanted to really expand my reading, and Eileen Chang has always been known to be there at the transition between tradition and modernity in China, and is able to put up a mirror into Chinese society's face during a time that was very pivotal to how China became what it is now. The contradictions and the beauty that have happened since then. And the thing with this one is I actually don't know if Eileen Chang is an author that I would love. Based on the descriptions that I've heard, the way she writes about love, politics, and family life in China, it actually doesn't intrigue me that much, but what intrigues me is being able to write from that perspective, from that specific time in the country that is so important to where it is now today. So I want to give it a try. I want to give Eileen Chang maybe 2 books to see how much I would love her writing. But I've been wanting to find this NYRB, specifically of the 2 books that I mentioned, but I'm just happy to even find one while I was traveling. So that is Eileen Chang from China. Next, we have probably the most intimidating author in this whole video that I'll be talking about, Samuel Beckett. This specifically is Molloy from Faber Books. This has been on my TBR, like physical TBR, for a couple months now, and every time I see the copy of it, I just look at the other books on my bookshelf, because the thing with Samuel Beckett, I've heard amazing, great things about him, but I've never heard anyone enjoy his books. It seems like he's an author that you don't really go to enjoy or to even just understand, but you sit with it. You sit with his writing uncomfortably until something clicks, which, again, difficult books in general, but this seems to be a layer beyond. From what I've heard, his writing itself feels like it's stripped back to feel like almost nothing. The characterization, the plot are so far removed that it becomes what's left when you take out the plot and the character from a novel. And yet that nothing feels profound, which, as I'm saying it, I don't know how that works. That fascinates me incredibly, but it also intimidates me greatly. So in a way, people describe him as a writer of emptiness, both in the lens of despair, but also humor, how both can be present in something that's empty. And again, I've never read his work, so all I'm giving you guys is what I've heard throughout the years of hearing about the intimidation of reading Samuel Beckett, and I want to see what the fuss is about. And I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but I hope I love it. Something inside me tells me I will, but when that will be, I don't know yet. And we're down to our last author. And we're going classic. We're going... Actually, really? You're adding this author to your list? This is a well-loved, well-known classic. And I'm defending myself now. I am intimidated by the writing, okay? Do not judge me. We have Jane Austen. So I guess this is probably the least difficult book or author in my list, because a lot of people love Jane Austen. A lot of people have recommended Jane Austen to me throughout the years. And I've read maybe like 4 pages in my life of Jane Austen, so I can't really say anything. But whenever I see the old-fashioned English writing at the very start, I am being honest here. I am being vulnerable. It puts me off. It intimidates me. It's not the kind of language struggle that I want to struggle with, if you know what I'm saying. But I do want to eventually read a Jane Austen book and other old English classics. But if I am being honest with myself, I do consider it an intimidating book / a book that I find difficult. And I hope that's okay. So that is every single author that is in my author bucket list that I really want to spend more time with, explore more of. And if you guys have read any of them and want to convince me to read more of them, please let me know what you think. And if I said anything wrong about what these books are about, please know I have barely read them or have never read them. And all I'm going off is what people say about them. So these are the difficult authors that I really want to explore more of. Let me know if there are any difficult authors, difficult books that you think I would love. Please, I am looking for recommendations, because I am really trying to make an effort to further diversify my reading, especially when it comes to style, genre, and difficulty. And let this be a reminder, spend more time with more difficult books. And I'll see you back at the usual spot.